3-bedroom townhome in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is 4119 Baylor Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. Looking to see whether or not this will cash flow as a Section 8 long-term rental. Now, I mean, look at the photos. I mean, I would probably replace the flooring, to be honest with you, in at least like half the home. Yeah, there's some hardwood flooring or wood flooring already, but I don't really love carpet. The bathroom, I mean, that's okay. I would probably replace the toilet still in this home, and it's got 2.5 baths, so that makes things a little bit easier to rent out when you have that many toilets in a home. Think about it, right? You all don't want to be sharing that many bathrooms together if you are a big family. So on Redfin for 38 days, 250 HOA, that's going to be a high HOA. So let's see what the impact is on our rental. So the first thing I want to do is you want to look at what is we want to look up Greensboro Housing Authority 2025 payment standards. And you're going to see right here that for 3 bedrooms, the payment standard is 1607, which they are actually paying 1607 for, based on some of the folks that I've been talking to. Now, if that was not the case, what I would tell you to do is go to affordablehousing.com, go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in bedroom count, and typically your rental assumption should be based on 1939. This is great. This is like, I think that's actually higher, right? Because if it wasn't higher, one thing I want to call your attention to is the rent reasonableness test. And the rent reasonableness test essentially says that in section 2.2, right, what I pulled up here is the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. The Housing Choice Voucher was previously known as Section 8, right? They rebranded it from Section 8 because of all the negative connotations associated with Section 8. So that's why they call it Housing Choice Vouchers now. That's what you commonly hear about it. Now, in Section 2.2, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA or the Public Housing Authority must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously, the size matters, unit type matters, right? So in this scenario, right, this 1939, you probably need to look for some sort of validation that another 3-bedroom townhome is renting for that, right? Not single family homes, just in case that this number is a single family home. Now, I want to say this is probably likely true because it's all within a 0.31 mile radius. But if it doesn't, then I would use the lower of the two, right? So in this scenario, I would use the lower of the two, which means the 1607 payment standard, that is the rent ceiling of what you're able to get for your 3-bedroom homes, is going to be 1600. So we're going to plug in 1607 right here. Now, typically that includes utilities, but I just know that a friend in here is already getting 1600 for their 3-bedroom townhome. So that's why I have a little bit more confidence in using that rental assumption. If not, I'll probably reach out to a property manager that's renting out locally so that they can give you a pretty good estimate, or just use the rental assumptions based on some of the data that you can see on Zillow. So for the rehab calculator, I'm going to come in here, and there's not going to be any big, there's not going to be a big roof repair, because typically for single family homes, I've been putting in roof patching, right? But if you're paying $250 of HOA fee, you're not going to be in a situation where you're paying for the roof repairs because that's covered by your HOA. All right. So if I go to just look at my painting, I'm assuming I got to repaint about 500 square feet of this home. Now, for my flooring, this is a 1,200 square foot home. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to replace half the flooring with LVP. Maybe I'll keep one of the carpets as in the bedrooms, but I want to replace some of the flooring in more high traffic areas like the living room, so that I don't have to constantly replace the carpet every single time there's a move out. All right. I want to take care of as much work as possible up front. So, and then I'm going to replace 3 of the toilets with high pressure flush toilets, so I never get a clogged toilet call, because otherwise that's typically how you lose money, especially every single time you call a plumber out there. Probably cost you $200. Then you replace the toilet, it's going to cost you $200. So you must get done up front with the right toilet. All right. So for the taxes on this property, let's see what they are. Let's go to my Redfin payment calculator. 123 My homeowner insurance is 72. It's pretty expensive. So I'm going to equal 72 times 1.2. And I'm adding a 20% premium here because I'm assuming that 72 number that Redfin was estimating was for a primary residence property. And if I'm using it as an investment property, people are going to view it as a riskier asset, right? That's what insurance companies do. So that's why I'm adding a 20% premium right here. My maintenance is going to be 5%, right? Typically, it was 10% for single family homes, but because I have a big HOA fee here, I'm using 5% because I'm assuming the HOA is going to cover some of my bigger capital expenditure items, like a sewer line, like a roof. A property management expense of 10%. And if I have 5% for my vacancy, then that gives me all the expenses that I have today. For my down payment, I got 25% in F19. So my cash to seller is going to equals my B4, 185 times my down payment percentage of 46,000. And so with my financing amount, I'm closing at about 7.5% right now. My financing amount is going to equals my B4 minus my down payment percentage. I'm a down payment amount in E19. So I'll be financing 138,000, 139,000 roughly. So if that is the case, right, and I'm renting this property out as a 3-bedroom for 1607, I will cash flow negative 147, $144. That's a negative 2.8% return if I bought this property for 185. So here's the interesting part, right? This is how you ultimately determine, based on rehab of $9,000, how do you determine what's a deal or not, right? Well, let's assume everything else stays constant. This is how I would fluctuate your data. I mean, your underwriting assumptions. If you lower your asking price to, let's say, 130,000, well, now you're at 3.8%. Let's say your target was 8%, right? And again, this is not investment advice. I'm not still saying any investments. I'm not saying that 8% is a magical number that everybody needs to reach, right? But you would have to buy this property because of how much rehab there is for about 108 grand, 108. That's almost 80 grand less than what is going on right now, right? That's for 7.5% return. So now you're cash on 260 a month, and now you're 7.8% return. And that's how you keep your emotions out of the deal, right? Because if you, let's say your rehab double, right? You get in there, you're like, oh my God, I had to replace all the plumbing behind a wall because they did such a shoddy job installing plumbing, had to re-plumb. Well, now you doubled it. Now all of a sudden you might have to buy this property for 100 grand because your rehab doubled. And that's how you get out of this trap of being too emotional over your deal. And now you can figure out, like, okay, no problem, Mr. Seller, I can't give you 108 grand anymore because I just found out all your plumbing's all out of whack and I need to replace all the plumbing for about $9,000. Right? That's a big deal. But that's how you not get emotional. You're just like, okay, I'm gonna walk away from the deal because this doesn't even meet my cash return of 8%. Right? It doesn't make any sense. So if let's not double the rehab. Let's go back to our original rehab. Let's say your interest rates drop by a full point overnight. And this can happen, right? If you are paying attention to 30-year mortgage interest rates, right? The 30-year mortgage interest rate is affected by two things. It's affected by the interest rate on the 10-year treasury yield, and then also by the spread between the 10-year treasury yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Now, historically, that spread was about 1.5 to 2%, but you can see right here. I mean, right here is almost like 3%. It's like 2.5 right here. But let's say you get better news about the trade war that's going on, right? If all of a sudden you see less volatility, less risk because trade deals are getting done, that spread will now begin to narrow. So you might gain 0.5 point. Then you might get the Federal Reserve say, okay, we're seeing good deals and now we're willing to cut rates. And now all of a sudden you might see the interest rate compress by 0.5 point. So this could happen overnight. So this is why I'm telling you, pay very, very close attention to what's happening in the mortgage interest because that could affect your buying power tremendously, right? So before our criteria was 108, right? Our target price was 108. But now with the interest rates dropping by 1 whole point to 6.5%, I can still achieve my target return of 8%, right? I can still achieve it with a purchase price of 117. So I can pay nearly $9,000 more for my property simply because the voucher simply because the interest rates drop by 4%. Your first love was from Greensboro. Well, maybe you can save yourself with the second one, and that's a rental property, DJ. That's funny. I love that. Thanks for making my morning, man. Nothing else I want to be doing except underwriting a Greensboro townhome at 6 a.m. and hearing about your first love. All right, that's a good story, man. We should talk some more sometime. All right, so now you understand exactly one, how to get your purchase price, how to get your rental assumptions by looking at the housing authority, by looking at the market rate that's available on affordablehousing.com. We went through how to estimate your rehab. We went through how to put in your expense assumptions. Again, please always put maintenance. There's so many people out there that are teaching you like, hey, my rent is this, my principal, interest, taxes, insurance, my PITI is this, so that's my cash flow. But they always forget about the maintenance. It baffles me so much, and it's such a irresponsible way of teaching because think about it. If you're holding onto that property, like you know something's gonna break at some point. It's just a matter of life. I mean, I replace things at my own home all the time. So why would that not happen for you? And if you don't underwrite with expense assumptions in there for maintenance, then you are understating your expenses and you are overestimating your profitability. And when you get a big repair 5 years down the road, 10 years down, or hope 15 years down the road for you, then you will be like, oh my goodness, what happened to all my profit that I thought I was making? And it all evaporates. So don't do that. Don't be that person that lies to yourself about what expenses there are. All right. And we talked about how to keep up with interest rates. So if you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, not .com, and you guys can get a copy of the spreadsheet. And this is the fastest for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet, right? Put your name, email, your phone number, and this is the fastest for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet without having to contact me. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Tuesday. Spend a quality time with your family and friends today. All right. That's what life is all about. I'll see y'all tomorrow for day 656. Have a good one, everybody. And thanks, DJ, for coming on. I appreciate you, buddy.